He didn't go looking for her. But fate sent his dog ahead. And what Timber found buried in the snow would change everything. She wasn't human. Her blood shimmered like crushed stars, her skin icy to the touch, her armor broken, her breath fading. Jake had survived a war between worlds. He knew better than to trust anything alien. But the way she looked at him, like he was the first person who didn't want her dead, made him drop to his knees. One touch was all it took. The moment his fingers met her skin, something ancient stirred, something forbidden, something neither species would ever allow. He didn't know her name, he didn't know her purpose, but he knew one thing. This girl from the stars didn't fall by accident. She fell for him. The snow was falling sideways that morning. I remember because Timber never barked in the cold. But that day he did. Loud. Frantic, like his instincts knew something I didn't. I followed him through trees I'd walked 1,000 times, through frost-covered silence and breath that steamed in front of me like ghosts. Then I saw her. She was half buried beneath a shattered piece of metal, glowing faintly, blood trailing from her ribs, blue skin, hair like ink floating in water, eyes that didn't look at me like a stranger, eyes that pleaded without words. I froze. I'd seen her kind before, from a distance, on screens, during broadcasts from the early invasions. We were told not to approach, not to engage, not to touch, especially not the ones who shimmered like royalty. But Timber didn't care about any of that. He trotted right up to her, nose nudging gently at her cheek. And for the first time since the sky broke open and they came, she smiled. I should have walked away, called it in, let someone else decide what to do. But instead, I stepped forward. I touched her. And from that moment on, nothing on earth or beyond would be the same again. The wind cut like a blade that morning, not gentle or graceful, violent, the kind that howled through your coat and rattled your bones. I was out collecting firewood, Timber close at my heels like always, his breath puffing small clouds into the bitter air. We were halfway down the ridge when he froze, ears forward, nose twitching, tail stiff. I lowered the axe slowly. "What is it, boy?" He didn't answer with a bark, just turned and bolted toward the tree line, his paws kicking up flurries as he vanished into the thicket. I cursed under my breath and chased him, down the slope, through bare branches, until the forest swallowed the noise of my boots. Timber never ran without reason, and when I reached him, I understood why. She lay crumpled at the base of a frost-covered boulder, half covered in snow, half covered in armor. Her skin glowed faintly beneath a thin layer of ice, pale blue, like light filtered through glacier glass. Her body was contorted, one arm twisted under her, the other stretched forward as if she had been crawling. And she was bleeding, not red, not human, but something brighter, like melted neon. Timber stood over her protectively, muzzle brushing her cheek gently, whining like he understood the weight of her silence. I should have walked away, but I couldn't. I knelt down, heart thudding in my throat. Up close, she didn't look like the monsters they used to broadcast during the invasion years. She looked broken, lost, barely hanging on. Her breathing was faint, vapor barely forming at her lips. But her eyes opened when I reached for her, eyes the color of collapsing galaxies. "Don't move," I said softly. Not that I expected her to understand me, but she did. Barely audible, her voice rasped something guttural, alien sure, but familiar enough to guess. "No. Touch." I hesitated. My fingers hovered above her shoulder. Timber whimpered again. "You'll die out here," I said. She stared at me, unblinking, as if weighing the words, the threat, the truth. Her eyes flicked to my hand. Then slowly, she gave a tiny nod. That's all I needed. I slid my arms under her. She tensed as I lifted her, and I felt her wince through her entire frame. She was light but not weightless, muscles rigid from the cold, breathing shallow. As I carried her back through the woods, timber circling close, my mind raced. I didn't know her name. I didn't know her species. I didn't know what would happen if someone found out what I was doing. But what I did know, more clearly than anything, was that this wasn't just an act of rescue. This was something else, something irreversible. The cabin was dim and quiet when I laid her on the cot. Wind clawed at the windows like it wanted to drag her back out, as if nature itself had decided she didn't belong here. I pulled the blanket over her slowly, careful not to jar her wounds. Her armor, if you could still call it that, was split down one side and scorched black across her ribs. The fabric underneath clung to her skin like second flesh, torn and soaked in that eerie, glowing blood. I'd never seen a being so fragile and terrifying all at once. Timber settled beside the bed without being told. He didn't bark, didn't move, just watched her. Always the better judge of souls than I'd ever been. I took off my coat, set it aside, and sat on the edge of the table near the stove. My mind was on fire with questions I didn't know how to form. Where did she come from? Why was she alone? Was someone, or something, looking for her? But none of that mattered right now. Her skin was cold. Too cold. I grabbed the emergency thermal pad from the cabinet and slid it under her side. Then I fetched a rag, heated water, and began cleaning the gash along her abdomen. She stirred at my touch, barely. Her fingers twitched. Her lips parted. Her eyelids fluttered. She was waking up. I dropped the rag back in the bowl just as her eyes snapped open. She sucked in a breath like someone who had been drowning. "Easy," I said, lifting my hands. "You're safe." She didn't believe me. Her gaze darted around the room, her limbs moving too fast for a body that weak. When she tried to sit up, pain knifed through her spine, her expression twisted in agony. Timber let out a single, low whine. That stopped her. Her focus shifted to the dog sitting only inches away. She blinked once, twice, as if trying to identify the creature by scent, by heat, by memory. Then she did something I didn't expect. She spoke, in clear, clipped English. "Where is this?" "You're in my home," I said. "About 20 miles from the southern ridge. You crashed, or were shot down. I don't know." She looked at her arms, her side, the blood-stained blanket. "You..." She frowned, voice cracking. "You helped me." I nodded. She inhaled sharply and squeezed her eyes shut, as if that realization physically hurt. "I wasn't supposed to be found," she whispered. I leaned forward. "What do you mean? No one was meant to know I was here?" Her words were slow, deliberate, each one chosen like a step over thin ice. "I didn't call anyone," I said. "If that's what you're worried about." She opened her eyes again, softer now, but uncertain. "What's your name?" I asked. She hesitated, the kind of pause that meant the name was dangerous, that saying it could break something wide open. Then, finally, she spoke it. "Caroline." The name lingered in the air longer than any breath. I said it once, gently. "Caroline." She closed her eyes again, not from pain, but relief. "You shouldn't have touched me," she whispered. "You'd be dead if I hadn't." Exactly. That word landed hard, but I didn't flinch. I just said, "Well, too late now." For the first time, a trace of emotion flickered across her face. Not anger, not sadness, something else, something I couldn't name yet. The fire had burned down to soft embers by the time she could sit up. She hadn't said much since that first exchange, just enough to let me know she wasn't going to bolt the moment her legs started working again. But trust? That wasn't anywhere in the room. Not yet. Caroline sat on the cot with her back straight, one arm crossed over her midsection where I'd wrapped the bandage. Her hair, deep blue and tangled, draped across her shoulder like a river frozen mid-flow. Her gaze followed every movement I made, measuring, never blinking too long. I handed her a metal cup with warm broth. She didn't take it. "It's not poisoned," I said, managing a small smile. "I wasn't raised to accept things from strangers," she replied flatly. "Guess you weren't raised for crash landings either." That got a flicker of something in her expression. Disbelief, maybe. Almost amusement. But it passed quickly. Timber shifted beside the hearth, head on his paws, eyes half closed but ears turned toward us. He didn't trust easily either. But he hadn't left her side since I brought her in. He'd laid down the verdict without speaking. She could stay. Caroline's eyes drifted toward him. "He doesn't fear me." "No," I said. "He saves that for the mailman." She didn't understand the joke, but she didn't dismiss it either. Eventually, she accepted the cup. One slow sip, then another. Her body relaxed, if only slightly. I returned to my seat across from her and leaned back. "You're not what I expected," I said. She raised an eyebrow. "What did you expect?" "I've seen the broadcasts, the armor, the speeches. Your kind shows up in formation, not half dead in a snowbank." She stared into the cup. "We're trained to be invincible in public, unreachable. It's part of the structure. Fear holds the hierarchy together." "And what holds you together?" Caroline's eyes lifted, sharp now. "Discipline." That word had teeth. She set the cup down beside her and exhaled. "On my world," she began slowly, "reliance is forbidden. Needing someone is weakness, especially humans." I nodded. "Sounds lonely." She looked away. "It's effective." "Sure. Until you're bleeding out in the woods with no one around." A pause. Then quietly she said, "We were told you'd either kill us or chain us. And what do you think now?" She didn't answer. Instead, she asked, "Why did you help me?" I thought about that for a moment. The easy answer would have been guilt, or instinct, or timber. But the truth was harder to explain. "You looked like you weren't ready to give up," I finally said. "And maybe I'm just tired of watching people disappear." That landed heavier than I expected. Her posture changed, not relaxed, but less armored. For a long moment, we just sat there. Two strangers from worlds that had been taught to destroy each other, now sharing warmth in a cabin lit only by dying flames. Timber stood suddenly and padded over to her. Caroline froze. He sniffed her hand, and then, just like that, laid his head in her lap. She didn't move. Not at first. Then, hesitantly, like touching a sacred object, she lifted her hand and ran it down his back. Not a word was spoken, but something massive shifted. A wall, centuries old, started to crack. It started with a low pulse in the sky. Just a hum at first, distant, rhythmic, mechanical. But I knew that sound. I'd heard it years ago when the world changed. Scout craft. Thin as a whisper, but deadly precise. They weren't made to be seen, just to search, to watch. Caroline heard it before I did. She rose from the cot like a shadow lifting off the wall, eyes narrowed, back tense. "They're close." "You sure?" "I don't guess about death." Timber growled, low and deep, before bolting to the door. His ears locked forward, his stance rigid. He was rarely wrong. I yanked my coat off the chair, grabbed the emergency bag, and turned to Caroline. "We move, now." She didn't hesitate. No protest, no pride. Just pure survival. Outside, the snow had started again, softer this time. But the sky above us was too quiet, too clean, the kind of stillness that comes before something breaks. We hiked fast into the woods behind the cabin. Timber led, cutting a path through drifts, his nose low to the ground. Caroline moved slower than I liked, still recovering but determined. Not once did she ask to stop. "Where are we going?" she asked, her breath visible between each word. "Somewhere they won't look," I said. "Old supply tunnels beneath the ridge. Human engineers built them when the sky first cracked open." She nodded once, trusting without question. 15 minutes in, I spotted them. 3 drones gliding just above the trees, lights flickering like stars. Their scans painted blue light across the branches, searching for heat, for pulse, for anything unnatural. I yanked Caroline down into the snow. We slid behind a fallen log, Timber pressed low beside us. "They'll find me," she whispered. "Not if I freeze you first," I muttered. She turned her head slightly, eyes sharp. "That's supposed to be a joke?" "Number. It's a thermal blanket soaked in creek water. Lowers our profile long enough for them to pass. Military trick." Caroline blinked, then, without another word, helped me spread it over both of us. For 5 long minutes, we didn't move. The world turned blue and silent. Snowflakes landed on our faces. I could hear her heart racing. Or maybe it was mine. The light passed. The sound faded. Still, we didn't move until Timber lifted his head again. We crawled out from under the blanket. Her breath shook now, whether from fear or the cold. I wasn't sure. "They didn't come for you," she said. "I know." "They came for me." I nodded. Her voice dropped. "They want to erase me, not rescue me. I failed their image." She said it like a confession, like it hurt more than any wound I'd dressed. "They won't find you," I said. "Not out here. But they'll keep trying." I met her eyes. "Then I'll keep hiding you." Caroline looked at me, really looked. "You don't even know who I am." "I know what you're not." She tilted her head. "You're not the monster they warned us about." That was the first time I saw something crack in her, something brittle behind the strength. She looked away quickly, but not before I caught it. We moved again, deeper into the forest, away from the paths. The tunnels were close now, the kind of place no light reached, somewhere forgotten by both sides. As we approached the hidden hatch, she stopped walking. "What?" I asked. She turned slowly, snow collecting in her hair. "Back there, when we were hiding, you didn't hesitate to cover me." "Why would I?" She stepped closer. "Because I wasn't supposed to matter." "You do now." That stopped her, not physically, something internal. Her breath left her in a slow exhale, like she'd been holding it for years. And then, so quietly I almost missed it, she said, "Thank you." The hatch creaked open, revealing blackness below. She followed me in, willingly. The hatch groaned shut behind us, locking the cold outside. The silence underground was different, thicker, heavier, like every sound had to fight to stay alive. My flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing old steel walls and crates stamped with codes no one remembered how to read. Caroline stepped inside slowly, her fingers brushing across the frost-covered pipes, the dusted surface of abandoned survival kits. "This place is forgotten." "That's why we'll be safe," I said. I guided her toward a bench near the generator room, long dead but clean enough to rest. Timber curled up at her feet again, the unspoken guardian he had become. She sank onto the bench without resistance, letting out a breath that seemed to carry years of exhaustion. For the first time since I found her, she looked grounded. I sat across from her, my flashlight set between us, casting flickering shadows that danced across her skin and caught in her eyes. She didn't flinch now, didn't guard herself the way she had before. There was something about this place, buried beneath soil and history, that made honesty feel less dangerous. "I wasn't always called Caroline," she said quietly, breaking the silence. I tilted my head. "Then why tell me that name?" "Because it's the only one I chose." I waited. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. "The one they gave me wasn't a name. It was a title, a rank, something I earned in a system that saw my value only in what I could do for them, not who I was." "What were you to them?" "A symbol," she said, her voice flat. "A perfect representative of obedience. They dressed me in gold, trained me to speak without stuttering, to stand without slouching, to smile without feeling. I was meant to inspire devotion and fear. She glanced up at me. And then I escaped, and I stopped being useful. I nodded slowly. So now you're nothing to them. No, she said. Now I'm a threat. I stood up and moved closer, sitting beside her this time instead of across. The flashlight's beam shifted, casting the rest of the shelter in a deep, soft blur. And what do you see in yourself? I asked. She hesitated. I don't know yet, but when I'm with you, I don't feel like a symbol or a liability. I just feel. That's enough, I said. She turned her head. Why do you keep doing this? Doing what? Making me feel like I'm someone. Because you are. She looked away again, but her voice didn't shake. You don't even know what I've done, who I've been. I gently touched her hand. Just once, not claiming, just present. Doesn't matter. You're not there anymore. Caroline stared at our joined hands. Then she shifted hers, weaving her fingers into mine. That simple act felt more real than anything I'd lived through in years. I carry a name that used to open doors, she said. Now I want to carry something else. What? She looked directly at me now, her voice clear. Yours. I felt my heart stumble in my chest. Jake, she said like it was a vow. If they come again, and they ask who sheltered me, who I belong to, I'll tell them. I didn't speak. I just brought her hand to my lips and kissed it softly. Not for show, but because I meant it. We emerged from the tunnels 3 days later. Snow had stopped falling, but the air was still sharp, like the world had been holding its breath the entire time we were underground. Caroline walked beside me, upright now, steady. Her limp had faded, but something else had changed too. There was a quiet in her steps, not from caution, but clarity. We didn't speak much during the climb. Some feelings don't survive being forced into words. When we reached the clearing where I'd first found her, where Timber had led me straight to her broken form, she stopped. The trees around us stood bare and still, silent witnesses to the moment that had rewritten both our fates. She looked up. I followed her gaze. There, through the clouds, something shimmered. It wasn't a drone this time. It was a ship, massive, silent, predatory in its grace, a royal design, sleek silver, humming with restrained power. It hovered above the horizon like a choice unspoken. Not attacking, not retreating, waiting. They found me, Caroline said. Her voice didn't tremble. I stepped forward. Do they know I'm with you? She nodded. They know everything. And? They expect me to return. And will you? She looked down at Timber, who had sat beside her, head tilted in his usual thoughtful way. I don't know yet. You don't owe me anything, I said. I owe myself the truth, she replied. Then she did something I didn't expect. She took 2 steps forward into the open clearing and raised her hand. A beam of light split from the ship's underside. It bathed her in a pale glow. No heat, just stillness. Her silhouette looked unreal in it, like she belonged somewhere else, somewhere above. The beam stayed for a long time. Then, it flickered once and shut off. The ship remained where it was, not moving, watching. What just happened? I asked, stepping beside her. I refused the recall code, she said. They won't extract me by force, not yet. They're waiting for me to change my mind. Will you? She turned to me, slowly, intentionally, and shook her head. I spent my life being programmed to obey, she said. But the first time someone touched me without an order, I felt alive. I'm not going back to a world that buried me in armor and silence. The wind stirred her hair. Timber stood between us, tail swaying softly. I found something here, she continued. Someone. I wasn't supposed to. And now? Now I'm not letting go. She walked up to me, placed her hands against my chest, and rested her forehead against mine. I should have died that day, she whispered, but you changed my ending. No, I said. You rewrote your own. Overhead, the ship tilted, not in aggression, but acknowledgement. Then, without a sound, it ascended, shrinking into the clouds like a dream ending too soon. Gone. Caroline exhaled, long and deep, then looked up at me. I didn't choose survival, she said. I chose you. It's been a year since the sky blinked and gave her back to me. The snow has melted from the trees. The cabin stands a little stronger now, patched, fortified, not from fear, but from purpose. Caroline built the solar array herself, said she needed something to shape, something to own that wasn't written by bloodlines or missions. She sleeps beside me most nights. Other nights, she stargazes, whispering names of constellations I still can't pronounce. But her voice isn't haunted anymore. It's calm, rooted. She's learning to live on Earth. I'm learning how to love someone not shaped by it. Timber's older now, slower on the hills, but still alert, still loyal. He was the first to find her, the first to accept her. And in a strange way, he still protects both of us. There's a trail we walk every morning, quiet, steep, lined with ash trees. She likes the view from the ridge, says it reminds her that life doesn't need to be big to be beautiful. One morning, as we sat overlooking the valley, Caroline reached into her coat and pulled out a shard of her old armor, the one I'd peeled off her when she was barely breathing. I kept it, she said, handing it to me. Why? She looked at me with a soft smile. To remind myself who I used to be, and who you helped me become. I turned the shard in my hand. It caught the sun just right, reflecting not just light but memory. Do you miss it? I asked. The sky? The structure? She shook her head. Not the world. Just the stars. You've got plenty of those here. They feel warmer with you. That was the moment I realized something. I hadn't just rescued her. She'd rescued me right back. From loneliness. From regret. From the belief that life had already shown me all it had to offer. That night, we built a fire outside under a clear sky. I laid the armor shard in the flames and we watched it glow, until it split down the middle, cracking with a soft snap like a bone giving up its last tension. Caroline whispered something in her language, then said it again in mine. Goodbye, Caroline. I looked at her, confused. That's your name. Was, she said, smiling. But now I want something new. She turned to me. You gave me life. I want your name as mine. I didn't speak. I just reached out. She took my hand and placed it over her heart. Say it, she said. I swallowed. You're my wife now? No, she grinned. I'm yours. That's bigger. And just like that, I kissed her. No fear, no hesitation, just gravity. Just two people, from galaxies apart, finding a home inside one another. Somewhere far off, another ship may come, another war may rise. But if they do, they won't find the girl they once molded. They'll find Caroline Jake, the woman who chose Earth, the warrior who chose love, and the legend that began the day a dog found an alien in the snow, and the man beside him dared to touch her.